All right, so it's a new beginning. And so for that occasion, I have, of course, hey, anything for all of you. New t-shirt, hey, to the moon. All right, last week I promised you that I would tell you about 5 amazing, phenomenal, incredible growth blue chip companies. So this video is going to be about growth blue chip companies. Before I get into the 5, just want to separate, differentiate the difference between what most people would consider to be blue chips and these growth blue chips. So in the original version, you're buying into companies that are, I don't know, 50 years old, 70 years old, 100 years old. They have well-known brands that really sort of have created these very long-lasting businesses that people can see have a lot of staying power. And that is what makes them blue chips, because people come and buy the products or service all the time, and that keeps their business continually there and then growing over time, either because more people are buying it and they're also increasing prices. I believe that right now you are seeing the genesis, the beginning, the seeding of really the future blue chips. And right now they are trading for what in hindsight are going to be pennies, just absolute pennies. And I can tell you that when I got started in this business, this was in the 1990s, I can recall actually looking at statements. And I used to work for the private wealth management of a large bank that's no longer around. And back then, private wealth management was a kind of backwater, sleepy part of the business, of the wealth management business. Today, it's a big deal. And so many people I would see had these then kind of known, but not yet blue chip stocks like Merck and Bristol Myers and others like it. And the most amazing thing about this were their costs, which is that they were in the cents, 1 cent, 2 cent, 5 cents, 10 cents. These folks had bought these stocks 5, 10 years ago when, truthfully, Merck was considered somewhat risky. Yeah, I mean, it seems hard to believe today. And Procter & Gamble and those kinds of companies were seen as something being like, hey, well, why does anybody need to pay up for a brand? People questioned notions today that we take for granted. So keep an open mind and understand that buying behavior of stocks change, the companies that change, and people's perception of what is safe, what is risky, what is a blue chip is also going to change. And this list of stocks, and I've actually come up with 60 of them, which I'm actually giving to all the folks that contributed to our Kickstarter. So we'll be getting that out to you soon. But for this video, 5 of the growth blue chips. And the operative word here is growth blue chips, because unlike the old blue chips, which have been around for 50, 70, maybe some, even 100 years, these are in their beginning phases. So they don't have the long-term track records. It's not possible. I mean, they were just started 5, 10, 15, at most 20 years ago. And they are still in growth mode. So they're taking the money that they generate, the profits they generate, and they're putting it right back into the business, which is exactly what Merck and Bristol Myers or Procter & Gamble and Coca-Cola and all of these companies were doing in their growth phases. The one big difference is that the world is a much bigger place today. The economies are much bigger. People's spending habits are known. So these companies are going to go through a 50-year sort of process of getting to legit, like blue chip status. This is going to happen much faster. So in my opinion, now when growth stocks have just been crushed, hammered, smashed, crashed, this is a generational opportunity to buy the blue chips of the future. So let's get into it. So growth blue chip that I'm going to talk about as number one is Teledoc. And many people might believe that telemedicine is a fad. I would say go talk to people that have used it, talk about the convenience, talk about the ability to access it from anywhere, talk about the life-saving capability of being able to access a provider instantly when something happens. So you're having something happen at home and the ability to get in touch with somebody to give you that instant piece of guidance, advice as to what to do until somebody can actually get to you or you can get to a hospital, an emergency room, life and death difference. Or on a simpler way, if you have to deal with something really small, a flu, a respiratory or breathing problem, and you just want to consult with somebody. The old way, you have to go make an appointment. They're like, oh, we don't have one for 3 weeks. And then, you end up doing things like going to the emergency room for something like this. So telemedicine solves so many different types of problems. And we saw that in 2020 when an amazing, extraordinary 60-something% of all the folks that use Medicare. So, the government runs this program if you're over 65. And it's a lot of people, and they all access telemedicine. So this stock, while it's been crushed, in my opinion, massive opportunity. And it is going to be a basic sort of a blue chip, something that people can be like, this is so obvious, healthcare. You're going to come back and use this again and again. And they have built the widest, largest network of doctors and patients. It's a platform. And it's got, the central element that so many stocks that are successful in this period of time have, which is the network effect. The patients are there because the doctors are there. The doctors are there because the patients are there. Since Teledoc has come public and has been releasing statements, their revenue growth has been 279%. Yeah, 279%. I would tell you that that's a big number. You'd have to go and screen for a lot of companies to see that, especially when they're doing something that you can just see: healthcare, basic need, dominant platform, network effect. This company is going to be around and it's going to be used again and again. And that's what makes it a blue chip, in my opinion. Remember, this channel, opinion, not advice. You're buying it at current prices at 2x sales, which people come to argue, hey, Paul, they're not making money. The sales thing, it's gone. Hey, if you're one of those people, this is just the wrong channel for you. I mean, growth investors are focused on sales, because if sales are not coming in at the very top, there's never any money to be made at the bottom line. And I told you already that these companies are still in growth mode, so they are recycling their profits into the opportunity, and that's the reason why they don't make money or don't show profits. But they're all pivoting to that, so they're going to have earnings within the next 12, 24, 36 months for sure. So this is an objection that's going to go away. And these are, this is a substantial company. I mean, Teledoc has $2.2 billion of sales over the last 12 months. $2.2 billion. We're not talking about like 5 million, 10 million, $2.2 billion. And you'll see all the companies that, are on this list, at least the ones I'm talking about today. On the bigger list, there are companies that are a little bit younger, but the opportunity size is so big, which is why I put it on there. But for this video, just, these 5 companies, I mean, these are big companies. These are going to be even bigger companies, but they're already pretty big in terms of how much money they generate, in terms of sales, how much growth that they've generated. What is an opportunity is how cheap they are, in my opinion. All right, so growth blue chip number 1 is Teledoc. Number 2, Zoom. This has gone from becoming like one of the most loved companies in the stock market to an absolutely hated company in the stock market. I mean, go Google for this, and pretty much, you'll see analyst downgrades and all these people hating on Zoom. And I'm here to tell you, like, I think that's just all BS. I'll just be like as blunt as I can be. Zoom, since it came public, 560% revenue growth, 560%, including 2020 when, that growth rate was 300%. So it hasn't given back the growth. It's slowed down, but of course, if you have a 300% year, of course you're gonna have a slowdown. I mean, that's just common sense. In terms of what price you're getting at, Zoom now trades for 6 times its sales. And again, like Teledoc, this is a substantial company. Over the last 12 months, $4.2 billion in sales. And what's the opportunity here? I mean, effectively, Zoom is sort of like the replacement for communications, especially at the business level. As you know, I'm no longer with Banyan Hill, and we've started a new company with my ex-colleagues. We've all gotten together. And one of the very first things that we got was Zoom, a subscription to Zoom, because it allows you to obviously have communication among your team, allows you to communicate with subscribers if you want to put them together, large crowds, and where everything just works seamlessly. And it's video, it's voice. You can also use it to record video. In fact, this video being recorded on Zoom. So extraordinary level of utility and adoption. And just like Teledoc, this network effect becomes very, very powerful eventually, which is that because everybody else is on Zoom, other companies are going to be forced eventually to move to Zoom, and it gives it this monopolistic sort of tendency or feature. And this is the network effect. Why is everybody on Zoom? Because everybody else is on Zoom. All right, quickly moving through. Next one is Airbnb. So many of you may have, especially this summer, I know there's been a crazy amount of traveling going on, have rented an Airbnb instead of checking into a hotel. And you'll see, I mean, Airbnb has essentially made extra rooms, extra houses, or even current houses into something that produces income. Very similar to what Uber did with cars. And Airbnb, since it went public, 90% revenue growth. I mean, huge growth. I mean, we're talking about during the pandemic. So just imagine, during a period when there's no restrictions on travel or anything like that, what is Airbnb's revenue growth going to be? I'll tell you, it's going to be incredible. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal. And when you go to look and see what's its price relative to its sales, it's trading for 10 times sales. And the reason for that is that, remember, Airbnb doesn't own any houses. They just own a platform. And you go on the platform and you pay them a fee. And so even now at its absolutely smashed price, there's enough stock market buyers that understand, like, hey, this is a valuable company. They own this platform that essentially networks the world's houses and turns that housing into potential income, places to stay. And they get it, which is why this is not trading as cheap as, say, something like Teledoc. And then once again, when you go and look at how much sales Airbnb has, $7.3 billion, $7.3 billion over the last 12 months. Just, this is a large company, folks, trading at a very cheap price that dominates this world. I mean, there's theoretically, people talk about VRBO, but I can tell you that that platform long-term is not going to win over Airbnb. And no need to tell me stories about how, you had a great experience there. This is a very, very powerful platform that connects people. It's got a brand. It's worldwide. It's going to be huge. And just remember, there's no need to let me know if you disagree, don't like. Hey, you can just watch the video and say, hey, I disagree. I'm not going to, pay any attention to it, and that's okay. All right, the fourth one is Coinbase. Controversial because cryptocurrencies are controversial. Coinbase is controversial, but to me, this is about the biggest no-brainer growth blue chip that there is. I mean, there is no other company that people think about in terms of cryptocurrency other than Coinbase. I mean, it is some combination of sort of like the New York Stock Exchange, which in its time used to be the dominant exchange for all stocks. And then sort of like the largest crypto bank, if you will, which would be like, let's say, the equivalent of JP Morgan. And then also the largest asset manager, if you will, in crypto, which would be the equivalent of BlackRock. So you take all of those three companies, organizations, and you smash them together. I mean, you would get, in success mode, this would be worth, hundreds of billions of dollars. Today, it's trading for, of course, a shell of that price because it's got crashed, smashed. But still, since it came public, 324% revenue growth, trading for a measly 3 times sales, and still over the last 12 months, even though its sales have slowed down, $5.8 billion worth of sales. All right. Finally, last one, Moderna. All right. I know there are many people, again, that be like, I want nothing to do with this, vaccines. I mean, hey, if it's not for you, that's cool. Just turn the video off and move on. It's totally cool. No need to come and tell me that I'm wrong. Come to argue about anything. I'm just talking about from a stock perspective. All right. So everyone knows Moderna. They came up with one of the 2 approved COVID vaccines. Big success around the world. Of course, since they came public, the sales of this vaccine has generated, hard to believe, but 43,000% increase in sales from where they were. 43,000%. And you can obviously see the stock spiked up very big in a big way. However, at current prices, because people are looking at Moderna and saying, well, what's next? They're not necessarily valuing it at a very high level, just 3 times its sales. Even though Moderna has $22.2 billion, $22.2 billion in sales. And then if you go and look on their website, what you'll just see is just, I don't know, like I tried to count, it was almost too many. It was like 30, 40 different potential medications, vaccines, drugs that they can make using their mRNA, which stands for messenger RNA platform. And they also have the capability to actually make these medicines, which, having been a biotech analyst, I can tell you that's unusual and different because it costs a lot of money to put that up. So Moderna is in a very, very good place. They've got this extraordinary pipeline, especially for really widely experienced conditions like the flu is one, HIV is another one, things like number of sexually transmitted diseases, anything to do with a virus. I mean, this platform can absolutely figure out how to put this into a vaccine. And that has a very high likelihood of being used and adopted in the United States and around the world. So in my opinion, Moderna, total no-brainer. So those are the 5 companies: Teledoc, Zoom, Airbnb, Coinbase, Moderna. 5 growth blue chip stocks. I told you why. Massive revenue growth, trading dirt cheap, big companies, multi-billion dollars worth of sales that are in there, which means that they're not like, in there just like beginning phases. And that's what qualifies them, to me, as growth blue chips. And what you will see is, if I'm right, over the next 5, 7, 10, longer time periods of time, you'll see all of these companies have the same characteristics, same qualities that everybody today looks at, the blue chips of the past, which is consistent cash flow, the ability then to return some money to shareholders, all those things I believe you're going to see in these companies and companies like it. So that's the video for this week. You know what to do.